Last time on Sailing Balachandra, we visited Frederiksted and St. Croix. Then we sailed to Grenada. During the passage, our mainsail gets damaged, and we arrived safely in Grenada.
If you're new to the channel, I'm Dan.
And I'm Noelle.
And we're Sailing Balachandra. We're from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and we are sailing around the Caribbean, and right now we're in Grenada.
Don't forget to hit the big red button down below that says subscribe. Press that button.
Hey guys, this week's video is all about do-overs. That's all the things that we could have or should have done while sailing down here to the Caribbean. And maybe some things we should have purchased or maybe shouldn't have purchased. A lot of it comes from meeting and knowing other cruisers along the way and seeing what they've done and think, well, that's clever, we should do that ourselves. And that's what this week's video is all about, and I hope you guys find it helpful and I hope you enjoy it. Our red and green running lights at the bow of the boat have been causing us constant problems. I was very fortunate to find extra parts at a used boat store in Luperon, Dominican Republic, but if I were to do it again, I would make sure that I had one or two complete running light setups, that's housing and fixture, ready to go for when they fail, because they do fail. One thing we definitely did not stock up on was engine oil. We bought a ton of engine oil for our diesel before leaving Halifax, but we had no idea how much engine oil we'd actually use getting down the coast. It turns out that we were buying engine oil almost everywhere we stopped. If I had a do-over, I would buy enough engine oil to do at least 2 or 3 oil changes and keep that on board. Always have a reserve of engine oil. One of our biggest mistakes here on Balachandra and this trip was buying a satellite phone used. Honestly, a satellite phone itself might have been a mistake. These days, most boats carry an Iridium Go, and recently we purchased a Garmin InReach. A Garmin InReach is a lot like an Iridium Go, and just as useful. The satellite phone we bought used at the time turned out to be a stolen phone, and it was very upsetting as it halted our trip to Bermuda, which we had planned for so long. If I had a do-over, I would have just bought a Garmin InReach. It's way cheaper than a satellite phone or an Iridium Go, and just as useful, and would have been perfect for getting us to Bermuda as long as we used our single sideband radio and Chris Parker to get our weather. One thing that we wish we could have had is a water maker. You hear a lot about water makers, and there's lots of ways to get water without a water maker. But the people that we've talked to that do use water makers on their boats seem to have no trouble with water. You never seem to have to go get it at a marina, and are generally pretty happy with their water makers. They're also very expensive, and Balachandra did not come with one. It was outside of our budget and we didn't pick it up, and we've had no trouble getting water, either collecting it from the rain or going into a marina to pick it up. It's not been a problem, but if we had a do-over and we had the budget, we would probably have installed a water maker.
Egg cartons. Some places we've gone to, you purchase eggs and they are in a cardboard casing. Cardboard's not great to have aboard. They often carry unwanted insects, for instance, cockroach eggs. So you take the eggs out of that container and put them in something either styrofoam or plastic. And we save those styrofoam containers so that we could reuse them as we go.
Our dinghy is like our family car. It gets us back and forth to the boat, and it's been reliable most of the time. But when you're cruising full time, the quality of your dinghy seems to make a big difference. We've had to repair this dinghy more than once, especially here where the transom connects directly to the inner tube. This seam just gave out and had to be re-glued. Over here you can see that the joint where the oars hook up to the dinghy has failed. This spot has failed several times, and this is my current repair, which is like a pipe and some stainless steel wire kind of holding it all together. This is working, but this is a weak point in this dinghy's design. Another thing is the paddles. We had one of our paddles catch under a jib sheet underway and just rip right off of the oar. So it might be a good idea, if you're doing a lot of cruising, to have an extra paddle on hand if you need to replace one like we've done here. Basically, if I were to do this over, I would probably buy a stronger, more reliable dinghy. If you've been watching some of our recent videos, you'll see that we've had to replace our outboard. Not only did the outboard that we have fail on us and need to be replaced, but we also found it was kind of slow. The new outboard is much faster, and a lot of the other cruisers seem to have faster outboards, and is more useful when you're bringing back loads of diesel or water jugs or anything heavy that you need to transport. If I had a do-over, I would definitely buy a faster outboard motor than the one we bought originally. Another thing we didn't plan for was anchoring the dinghy. You just don't think about it when you tie your dinghy up to a dock all the time. Down here, every time you stop at a beach or go snorkeling, you're going to need a dinghy anchor. And our little anchor with just a rope wasn't really doing the trick. We needed a chain. If I could do it again, I would have bought a few feet of chain to put at the end of this little anchor just to hold the anchor shaft down and keep it bedded in the sand. This is some used chain I picked up in Georgetown just out of pure luck.
sunshades. Now that we're down south, it's a lot hotter, and it helps keep us cool and keep the interior of the boat cool as well. It's a great idea. Just go to a secondhand store while secondhand stores are still available to you. Purchase yourself some bed sheets.
Balachandra didn't come with a cockpit table. A cockpit table is great for entertaining, especially if you want to have a meal on deck or if you're being social with drinks. If I could do it again, I would have added building a cockpit table to my list of tasks preparing for this trip. We were lucky and we actually found a cockpit table used at Sailors Exchange in St. Augustine, and were able to modify it to work with our cockpit. Make sure you stock up on sail repair tape. We found that sail repair tape turned out to be quite expensive in the Bahamas when we needed it. We only brought enough to do maybe one repair. We should have brought a whole roll. If you can buy sail repair tape and get it for a good price, I recommend you stock up. We bought extra propane cylinders for our barbecue, thinking that we'd be going through these and catching all kinds of fish and barbecuing meat whenever we got it. We don't run the barbecue all that much, and we don't get meat or fish all that much either. We thought we'd have better luck with the fishing. If I had a do-over, I don't think I would have bought so many cylinders. I think we bought maybe 12 cylinders all together. We've used about 2, maybe 3.
Another item that we wish we had purchased before leaving home is a portable hard drive. Portable hard drives are handy to have to exchange photos and videos with friends along your journey.
One thing I didn't realize I would go through so quickly is plastic scrapers. I've gone through several, and some have just slipped right out of my hand. But right now I've got a few. There's short ones, long ones, and a couple of homemade ones I made, especially this one, which I made from a dustpan I purchased and a piece of pipe and some zip ties. If I had a do-over, I would definitely find some cheap plastic scrapers and buy quite a few.
Beach chairs. We purchased 2 beach chairs before leaving Nova Scotia, thinking that they'd be handy to have. Quite a few times we've put them in the dinghy and dinghied to shore, and not once have we unfolded them and used them.
One thing I learned about the hard way is fishing lures. Had I had a do-over, I wouldn't have bought any fishing lures in Canada, to be honest. When you get down into the southern United States and even into the Bahamas, you start seeing the lures for the fish that are actually there, and they're very different than the lures they sell back home. If I had a do-over, I would save my money and my time and look for lures when I got into the southern states. One thing we didn't have when we left Nova Scotia was a good brush for scrubbing the hull. Not only do you scrape the hull with a scraper, but it's a good idea to have a brush that's fairly coarse for scrubbing the weedy stuff off. If you have a good brush like this, it'll take that stuff right off your hull and keep it clean. Clean like when you first launched. I bought this one used at a second-hand store in Florida. If I had a do-over, I'd probably try to find the same thing back home. One thing we realized that we should have done with our canned food was to remove the labels. We did identify the contents of each one with a Sharpie on top, but it's a good idea to take the paper labels right off the can. If any moisture gets on that can, it'll stay in that paper label and cause the can to rust. If you're putting your cans in the bilge, it's a good idea to isolate the cans in some kind of a container that's waterproof or close to waterproof. We had a lot of water come in Cape Hatteras when our chain locker flooded, and a lot of cans got wet and we lost a lot of food due to rusting. I discovered the hard way that flippers are really important to diving, especially when diving deep. And the flippers that I brought on this trip were just too short. They're more like travel size flippers. Also, this particular design doesn't seem to hold up that well. After a couple months, the rubber here started to give way. These new flippers are longer and will make a big difference. Had I known, I would have bought the longer flippers to begin with. Another really important item for diving is a weight belt. This is something else I didn't realize right off the bat. I thought weight belts were only for deep divers. But when you're free diving, I learned that a weight belt is really important to get deep in the water quickly. And without a weight belt, you're just working too hard and it's very, very difficult. Had I known, I would have purchased a weight belt back home and brought that along.
Locks. It's great to have extra locks. There's been a couple of times I've been handing Dan a lock to lock up the dinghy, and all of a sudden it finds its way to the bottom of the drink. Also, they often get rusty. So yeah, pack yourself some extra locks. It's great to have.
Our courtesy flags certainly don't last very long. Check out our Bahamas flag. It's in tatters. We got a really good deal on a full Caribbean pack of courtesy flags on eBay. If I had a do-over, I would buy 2 packs of flags to replace the ones that get damaged, and they do get damaged very quickly. If you can find high quality courtesy flags for a decent price, it's probably worth the money. After dealing with dew point issues again in New York, just as we did living in Halifax at the marina, some of our teak was getting moist and we were dealing with a little bit of mold. Also, when we were in Luperon, we had some rain come in and moisture built up in the boat. If I could do it again, we would have oiled all the teak on board before leaving Halifax, just to make sure that everything was well oiled and less likely to produce any mold or mildew on the teak. I was really upset back in Marblehead near Boston when I lost my long forceps in the ocean. I thought forceps were easy to find. It turns out they're almost impossible to find. I only have this small 6-inch forcep now, which is still just as useful, but long forceps are really great for cleaning out through hulls under the boat, or grabbing that nut or bolt that fell down into the engine compartment and you just can't get your fingers in there. If I had a do-over, I would buy several pairs of forceps. Make sure they're stainless steel and can hold up to the saltwater environment. I didn't realize how hard it was to find guitar strings in some of these islands. It's basically impossible. If I had a do-over, I definitely would have bought extra guitar strings. I think I only brought one set. Saltwater and guitar strings just don't mix. Make sure you have extras. So that's the end of our do-overs video. I hope you guys find it helpful and useful for your trip planning. Hopefully that'll help you avoid some of the mistakes that we made on our trip down south. But hey, you know, mistakes is learning.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this week's video, please don't forget to give us a like or leave us a comment down below. We enjoy reading those. And again, subscribe so that you don't miss out on what's to come.